I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the fintech trends in emerging markets, like Jonathan said. Throughout the conference, we've talked a lot about trends that are happening in developed markets where financial institutions are a little bit more built out, a little bit more entrenched. Today, we started moving towards some of the other emerging markets, like China and India, for example. But today, I want to focus a little bit more on what are the fintech trends happening in Africa today. So first of all, why is this important? Why is this an opportunity we should be thinking about? So to start, bank access is still a huge issue for many people in sub-Saharan Africa. As you can see here, in 2011, there were 3 available commercial banks to every 100,000 people in the area. So even just getting access to banking services was a huge obstacle for many people. And the thing is that once you actually have access to the services, it's actually really expensive. So as you can see here, about 1/10 of the cost ends up getting eaten by the transaction fees. And sub-Saharan Africa is actually one of the few places where that amount actually went up from last year to this year. And in 2014, 2/3 of adults did not have access to a financial account and were not onboarded onto the financial system. So there's still a huge opportunity here to bring a new demographic into the financial services sector. And that opportunity is expected to grow. So here we see the UN population estimates for the future. And as you can see, they expect most of the population growth in the world to happen in Africa, and we're expected to see a huge middle class emerge. So a lot of the demographic shifts we've seen in Asia in the last few decades, we're expected to see in Africa in the coming decades, and where there's little financial infrastructure and an exploding population, there's usually a lot of opportunity. And this is a demographic who's typically been financially underserved. So who are the players that are right now helping build out this emerging fintech scene? So Michael Joseph, who's considered the father of M-Pesa, which is a mobile money transfer service, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But he talks about how we're really just scratching the surface of this opportunity, and there's a lot of consumer demand now to participate in new types of financial transactions, transact across borders, and we need to start building new financial institutions to enable this. So here, again, you can see our trends tool, which monitors media chatter, and interest and media coverage of the African fintech scene has gone up very significantly in the last year. And when we look at startup activity and investment into the space, we see that it mirrors a pretty similar trend. So 2017 is right now on track to be one of the strongest years for the African fintech sector that we've seen, and really just shows a continued growth from the last few years. And so the fintech startups in Africa are attacking a wide range of parts of the financial services industry, from payments to lending to building entirely new ways of doing credit assessment. And thanks to these startups, as well as banks and other financial institutions, we're starting to see an explosion of mobile financial products that are available to the unbanked. So here you can see the number of services that are available, and the growth in sub-Saharan Africa is much stronger than any of the other regions. And so because of the accessibility to the service, we're now seeing more people and businesses be included into the financial system through mobile financial accounts. So there were less than 1 million in 2006 versus nearly 300 million in 2016. So we've really seen very strong growth, and there's now a critical mass of people actually included in the African financial system. One of the corporate success stories in the area has been M-Pesa, which, like I talked about before, is a mobile money transfer service that was started by Safaricom and Vodafone, and in 9 years has amassed about 30 million people and has continued that growth since. And now we're seeing more financial services corporates get involved in the African fintech scene, either by investing or acquiring fintech startups or launching their own financial products to get a slice of some of the emerging trends happening in fintech today. So that's what's being built right now. What are the implications for this going forward? So because the financial system in Africa is being built from the ground up, we actually can see there's actually a possibility to see Africa leapfrog the existing financial systems by incorporating a lot of the new technologies and modern tools that we see today. So if you guys have been listening to some of the other panels, we've heard about how financial infrastructure has been a huge detriment to progress moving forward. And so we can actually see Africa leapfrog in certain ways, for example, in mobile banking, in usage-based microfinancing, and in blockchain infrastructure. Everything always comes back to blockchain, is moral of the story. So when it comes to mobile banking, M-Pesa is another sort of good example here. It's actually become the hub to access a lot of different financial services, whether that's paying for different things or recharging phones or more. It's actually turned the mobile phone into the gateway and the access point for a lot of different financial services, which has really democratized access to the financial system. And so thanks to mobile phones, again, we have a lot of granular and personalized data as well as real-time data. And so that actually enables a lot of pay-as-you-go financing mechanisms. So for example, we see here PayJoy, which is using software to basically create more flexible pay-as-you-use systems for different types of hardware, like phones, TVs, and more. And when it comes to blockchain, because there's less financial infrastructure and existing systems to compete with, we actually could see an uptake in blockchain companies first in somewhere like Africa. So recently we've been seeing some financings into Bitcoin and blockchain companies. And it's not just wallets and exchanges and some of the primary use cases that we've seen here, but we see some more interesting and unique cases like the Sun Exchange, which is attaching a decentralized power generation system with a blockchain system, which was actually sounds like a similar project was talked about in the last panel, to basically enable people to pay and generate energy between each other. And so what are the key things to think about when thinking about the African fintech scene? Well, for one, it's expanding. It's still early days, but it's expected to grow quite a bit. And so this is also a population that has been previously financially underserved. So how can we build products that are available to this new demographic that can appeal to them? And also, it's an entirely new paradigm. So we're seeing an entirely new type of financial infrastructure get built out. So if leapfrogging does happen, are you prepared to understand where you would be most successful? And so those are some of the fintech trends that are happening in Africa today. I'm going to pass it back to Jonathan, who will help introduce the next panel.